When I say I love crap, I'm talking about searching for low-budget fantasy movies with dragon in the title, beating Army of Two with a friend, and watching all of the Twilight movies more than once. On purpose. So when I heard about Bloodrayne Terminal Cut, the definitive edition of a corny action game with a cheat code called Juggy Mode, starring a Damphir in low-rise pants who can defy physics by doing a corkscrew kick attack, then give an enemy a standing lap dance while draining their blood, I went all in. But all of those ideas are packed into mechanics, graphics, and hardware limitations from a 21-year-old game. And as someone who's never played it before, I want to know if Bloodrayne is the video game equivalent of a memorable grindhouse flick, or if it just sucks the life out of you. Before we get into this, know that there will be sexual images and noises. Oh boy, the noises in this review. While you're probably watching this at home on your computer rather than on a pew at church, still be aware of what you and the folks around you are about to see and hear. Bloodrayne is trash. And I mean that in a loving way. But, spoiler alert, also in the bad way in some places. Good trash is like comfort food. Like a buffet with a lunch special so good, the restaurant has to max out at 2 stars. All enjoyable bad pieces of media need a sense of passion, enthusiasm, and creativity to separate them from just bad media. On the surface, Bloodrayne is everything I want out of a corny good time. But as a whole, the scales get a bit off. You play as Rayne, who is half vampire, half human, and all violence. Laura Bailey really tries to give Rayne a personality as extra as Rayne's physical appearance. Her line reads are mostly solid, and she delivers on nearly everything, having a layer of repressed anger or playfulness that keeps the character consistent. But you could remove the good part out of a good one-liner when it's overused or slapped randomly onto a scene where it has no context. Rayne only has a few barks she will repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat, and there's seemingly no correlation to when she says those lines and her action. So she'll say, "Oh, what will the neighbors think?" both when someone is screaming as their arm flies off their body, and when she's walking down an empty hallway. Rayne works for a group called the Brimstone Society, and they're trying to stop Nazis from getting ancient artifacts that will give them incredible powers. That sounds like a great story for an action game. You have hordes of enemies you can kill and celebrate as their blood falls down like rain around you because they're horrible. You can have a wealth of scary monsters to fight and humanoid enemies with absurd tech like jetpacks. You can go anywhere in the world to fit these fantastical themes. But in the 7 to 10 hours it takes to beat, you'll learn little more about the world, Rayne, or your enemies. There's a few things that eventually happen that I liked, and I won't spoil, but by the time those interesting moments came up, the game was way past the fun's expiration date. Good gameplay can overshadow a boring story. The initial pitch of what gameplay offers is outstanding. Destructible enemies and environments, a growing suite of vampiric powers, over-the-top acrobatic combat. It all sounds great, but digging into each one shows none are deep enough to draw blood. Combat starts easy, with Rayne having a limited attack. You mash attack, and she does a few whirly-doos. As you level, you get more moves, and they look fantastic. When you get the slow-mo showcase of it, in practice, you just keep mashing a single attack button and she cycles through her growing list of attacks. And it's about as exciting as hitting refresh to watch a GIF again and again and again. You also get guns that auto-lock onto enemies, which can be a problem when you whip out a rocket launcher to blast an enemy that's far away, and it auto-locks on a closer enemy. Unfortunately, just like melee combat, it doesn't put the fun in mostly functional. You can cut enemies into pieces with your arm blade things. Do those have a name? Are they like the weird tonfas? Are they made? Is that a real thing? I can't find definitive answers about this. You can lob off legs and enemies will crawl. Cut off arms and they can't shoot or attack you. Or you can cut off their head for an instant kill, which does seem like it should be the default place to aim. Watching body parts explode out from enemies is entertaining and was impressive in 2002. But the joke gets old. The destructible environments fare similarly. The environment can only break in very specific, usually obvious points, essentially turning them into kick-only doors. And the charm of doing the gravity-defying twisty kick to break them also gets old. With a mix of cool ideas and underwhelming execution, the whole game just sort of blends together as a linear but incoherent mush. Even standout moments like piloting a mech or having a person's head and spine jump out of their body get lost in the mundanity of mashing attack, jumping, and healing. Oh, which does lead to my favorite and the most awkward part of the game: getting health. You're a vampire, so drinking the blood of your enemies to simultaneously kill them and bolster you is a great idea. You could even position the person you're drinking between you and other enemies to use them as cover. You can use the blood draining as a pseudo combo extender to jump between enemies, and it adds tension when you're low on health, because healing requires getting within biting distance of the thing that could kill you. From a design and execution standpoint, this aspect is brilliant. While it suffers a bit from some of the general clunk that curses every other part of the game, it was a constant sense of fun and tension throughout. And I'd honestly love to do a deep dive just on this one mechanic at some point. The act of drinking blood is playfully erotic, but the noise is which is just a delight to have happen every few minutes when I was streaming this. Oh, and if you activate slow-mo when you're drinking, you get treated to this. But that's my take. While I was playing this on stream for this review, Elijah, the unabridged gamer, stopped in to chat. Elijah has the same love for camp as I do, and he had a very different take on Bloodrayne.
Hi all. Yeah, I definitely say I had a much smoother go of things with this game. Playing with keyboard and mouse helps immensely, as PC was Terminal Reality's preferred platform. The camera handles marvelously, and the button layout is much more sensible. I love how the first 2/3 are basically Metal Gear Solid by way of a Paul W.S. Anderson Resident Evil movie. Completely over the top in just the right way. Though the combat is simple, there's a sandbox of toys in most fights that makes the power fantasy of being a heroic slasher villain immensely satisfying. Cartwheeling in the air while firing an RPG that instantly takes out a mini-boss is something you usually only expect from a Doom game. Now, it absolutely struggles to hold it together in some sections, particularly the finale, but there's an interesting reason why. You see, Bloodrayne is actually the third Nocturne game, set after Blair Witch, Rust and Parr. The latter sections at the castle are a returning location from Nocturne 1, and it's implied that Rain is Svetlana's half-sister. However, Terminal were cutting it close with this one as their last publisher was folding, and they didn't want to lose the Nocturne IP to their new publisher, hence why this one ended up becoming a standalone successor. At the same time, it was their first real attempt at making a console action game. Thus the disparity in controls between gamepad and PC. If you can look past the game's struggles, I think there's something incredibly unique that's worth playing, but it definitely comes with certain caveats that you have to bear in mind going in. If nothing else, it's surreal to think that Bloodrayne technically takes place in the same universe as Blair Witch.
So with all of its great ideas and shortcomings weighed as a whole, is Bloodrayne worth playing? For me, God, it's an easy no. For all of its great ideas, fun gimmicks, and memorable events, the actual moment-to-moment gameplay is tedious and repetitive. Not only that, the genre of ridiculous action games have moved so far beyond what Bloodrayne brings. Bayonetta, Oni-Chanbara Origins, Control, Katana Zero, and other games I am blanking on right now have similar vibes to specific aspects of Bloodrayne's ridiculous power fantasy and outrageous abilities, while outclassing Bloodrayne in pretty much every measurable way. Well, aside from listening to Elijah's experience while I was playing and the summary of his thoughts now, it makes it clear why we have such differing opinions about it. I also think Elijah nailed the comparison to a Paul U.S.S.W. Anderson Resident Evil movie, because I don't like any of his movies, but it does have the same feel as those Resident Evil movies. And if someone liked those, then I can definitely understand why they would like Bloodrayne more than I did. The game absolutely has unique ideas, and it does try to bring something special to the audience. But like Elijah mentioned, a lot of the interesting stuff are things surrounding it, rather than the game itself. If you know the backstory, or even if you like the unique ideas it brings enough to look past the clunk, some people, like Elijah, will honestly love. And that's great. But if it sounds a bit too cumbersome or rudimentary, you might be like me and celebrate it and the others who like it, while keeping that space on your hard drive open to something else.
Whether you love or don't have a taste for Bloodrayne, this video is made possible thanks to the 7 people who backed me on Patreon. What's that? 8 more people have joined since the Super Metroid video, bringing the total to 15? That's awesome! Seriously, thank you all so much. I am so happy to see this grow. And if you watch my live streams on here or on Twitch, you already know what my next game is going to be.
Let me pass.
Oh no.
May I pass through here?
I am doing that next, aren't I?
Let me pass. May I pass through here?